Let's talk about past lives, shall we? So this is the first in a series of several videos that we're going to highlight this whole concept of past lives. We have empirical research that there is genealogical constructs and things that influences us that come from our bloodline. That has been thoroughly researched, meaning they have done studies on rats, or mice actually is what we do, and they have shown that certain genealogical or genetic markers follow in the bloodline. And so we know that if, and I'm going to use myself as an example, my lineage is Swedish, Irish, and Scottish, and theoretically I come from a long line of Irish drinking, carousing, eating, partying, angry men. And so while by the time it got to my generation, I was morbidly obese and really liked wine and all that sort of thing, you can trace some of those genetic markers. And certainly for those of you, you know that you have inherited certain characteristics from your bloodline. And those are things that we work on in therapy. And it's completely, totally fine, right? You have genetic predispositions. You have a medical history. Part of the reason why in a thorough psychosocial history, we get your family's medical history. If your parents were both diabetic, chances are you're going to be diabetic. My dad was bald by the time he was 25. My brother was bald by the time. Now I've got more hair still, but I have a beautiful bald spot that I have inherited from my bloodline. Now, apparently I have a mixture of my mother and father's genetic code, and I got at least some of my mother's hair, and I'm not quite as bald as other men in my family. So yippee. But we know that those things happen. And so, but this whole past lives idea, I know has started in the realm of the woo-woo, if you will. And one of the people that I studied with for about a decade is Brian Weiss. And Brian Weiss is a psychiatrist. He is an MD, and as he would say, would be the least likely candidate to talk about past lives. But in his clinical practice, it happened, and he's written a number of books, New York Times best-selling books. I've talked about those before. The seminal book, if you'd like to look it up, is Many Lives, Many Masters. And so I studied with him for about a decade. And when I say that, I went to his conferences, as I like to say, stalked he and his wife Carol, and became pretty well acquainted with him in the way I did as a student. And this was many years ago, probably in the 90s, that I focused my study. And I was certified by the Weiss Institute in past life regression and specialized in that in my practice. So the idea is, even though we talk about empirical research in terms of studies that have been done, I'm going to say now we have a lot of evidence in the, evidence. I'm not going to call it empirical research, but I'm going to talk about a collection of a lot of information around past lives. Certainly many authors and many people have talked about it. And so whether you believe it or not, I know in the realm of hypnotherapy that unconscious minds believe in past lives and that reincarnation, is a thing and that people think. Now, very important to understand, and this is how you would define whether or not you are responding to past life material. Past life material will only present itself in this life if you still have something to work on. So in the realm of mental emotional release or hypnosis or neurolinguistic programming, this is what it looks like. If you have a pattern in your life that has no apparent roots in trauma or genetics, right? You don't appear to have inherited this pattern. You don't appear to have this pattern by virtue of a traumatic or historical artifact. Then chances are it could be what we call a karmic pattern. And what this would be a relatively unexplainable pattern, trend, habit, or theme in your behavior, in what you're attracting, that makes no real sense. You can't say, oh, it was because when I was 4, XYZ happened, or, when I was 10, I was in a car accident, and that's why I have X, Y, or Z. And so to the extent, we're going to look at this through the course of several videos, we call it a karmic pattern, and we're going to look at maybe perhaps the roots might be in a past life, and we'll talk about what that means and how to handle it.